So if you're curious about maybe some key differences between the civilian life and the military lifestyle, well, stick around because that's what we'll be explaining in this video. What's up, friends? Welcome to an all new video. In this one, I got 5 things that particularly I thought maybe stand out to someone who is interested in knowing maybe the difference in certain aspects of having a civilian job compared to being in the Army. Now, will these apply to probably other branches of the military? Sure, probably, but again, I was United States Army, so, my experience is from the United States Army, so that's what we're kind of mainly, going to be referring to, even though probably a lot of this still refers to other branches as well. And also along with that, there's also more than 5 things that are probably very key and different from that, but these are just 5 that, I wanted to kind of point out. We'll talk about maybe some other bonus things along the way, so make sure you stick around for the entire video. But let's go ahead and talk about this very first one. It's also no particular order, but this first one that I put on there is basically the hours that you work. So, when you're doing a normal civilian job, maybe if you're full-time, you're working 40 hours a week. If you go over that, then you're possibly getting overtime. If you're working on a holiday, you're probably getting holiday pay, all that kind of stuff. In the Army, that's not the case. So you could work maybe 5 hours in a week. You could work maybe 500 hours in a week. Now, obviously, I know that you can't have 500 hours in a week, but I'm just saying that as an example, that it doesn't matter how little hours you work or how many hours you work, you're still getting paid the same. There's no overtime when you're in the United States Army, and there's no holiday pay. If you're working holidays, weekends, you're working a crap ton of hours or very little hours, you're getting the same pay based on whatever your pay grade is, which is your rank, that you're receiving. So that pay stays the same no matter how many hours you work. So that's bad in the case of, you work a crap ton of hours, you're still getting the same pay, but it's good in those times when maybe you work very little hours, because sometimes that does happen. It may vary from unit to unit and your MOS and everything as far as how often it happens, but there's times where the leadership is like, next week's gonna be super busy, we're gonna be working a lot of late hours, so we're gonna start cutting loose the soldiers at like noon all week this week. That way, next week, when they're really exhausted and working really hard, they can look back at, the last week when they got released early. Again, it'll really vary on how often that happens or if it happens at all or whatever, but just kind of the key thing to note is that it doesn't matter how much or how little you work, you're always getting paid the same. Next up, the second thing that I wanted to kind of cover is vacation time. Now, it may vary, on the civilian side as far as how much vacation time you earn per year. Maybe one of the common ones is maybe something like 2 weeks or something like that, maybe less. It just really depends on the employer, I guess. But, that may be something where that employee gets that up front, they get all that vacation time up front, or they have to, earn it every pay period. In the military, you get 30 days, so that's quite a bit compared to a lot of civilian jobs. That is acquired, so you have to earn that, through the pay periods and everything, but if you were to not take any vacation time at all throughout a whole year, you'd basically end up with 30 days of vacation time. Now, some things on the benefit side of this, of being in the Army and having 30 days of vacation, well, that's a lot of vacation days compared to what you normally get on the civilian side, so you get that. Now, soldiers who are brand new in the Army, you have to earn that. You have to build that up to 30 days if you didn't take vacation in an entire year. But whether you are a new private or a soldier that has been in the Army for 20 plus years, it is the exact same amount. It doesn't matter if you're brand new or a long-term veteran of the Army, you still earn 30 days per year. So that can, and it's good for the side of the, young soldier, they get to earn the same amount as the higher people, but maybe bad for the people in higher ups, you've been in the Army for a long time and it really doesn't change. But still, 30 days, a year is still quite a bit. Now, the disadvantage side of that is that, yes, while it is 30 days, that still counts weekends and holidays. On the civilian side, if you're taking 2 weeks off, that's maybe only really 10 days because you're only counting Monday through Friday if you have a Monday through Friday job. The weekends don't count towards your vacation hours because you would have had that time off anyways. In the Army, that does not apply. You still have to add in those weekends, and even if there was a holiday in there, maybe say like something for the 4th of July or whatever, that 4th of July, even though you normally would have been off, you still have to count that towards the day that you're burning of your 30 days or whatever days you had of vacation time. The next thing on the list, number 3, that I've decided to kind of point out is that you can't quit. I mean, a lot of people may be obvious to you, but in a civilian job, you're tired of that leadership, your boss, you don't like the job that you're doing, whatever, you want to move to something bigger and better, or just change up the lifestyle or whatever, you can put in a 2 weeks notice, or you can give no notice and just quit that job and move on to something else. In the Army, you can't do that. You can't go put in no 2 weeks notice. You can't decide that I don't like this leadership, I don't like this job, and I just want to quit and go find something else to do. You're obligated to a contract. Whatever that contract was that you initially signed up for, whether it's a 3-year contract, 4-year contract, 6-year contract, whatever it is, you're obligated to that contract, and you're gonna have to tough it out throughout that contract to get through it, and then at the end you make the decision if you want to re-enlist or not. If you're not happy, then you don't re-enlist and you simply just separate from the Army, move on with your life, find another job, whatever you want to do. But if you are happy, then you do another contract, and hopefully that next contract or however many contracts past that go well for you, because like I said, whatever it was that you locked in for, whatever amount of years that you sign up for, you're locked into that time frame. You cannot quit. You could maybe try to get yourself in trouble and get kicked out of the Army. I definitely would not recommend that, because that can definitely mess up your future. So that's probably the only way you can really get out of your contract earlier than normal, is to get kicked out. Next is number 4 on the list, which is guaranteed promotions, pay raises. Otherwise, they're actually officially advancements, but is what I'm talking about is moving from the pay grade of an E1 to the pay grade of an E4, moving from a private to a specialist. That's an advancement, and that's pretty much guaranteed in the Army as long as you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and not getting in trouble. On the civilian side, you may not be guaranteed any kind of promotion or any kind of pay raise or anything like that, any kind of advancement. You might, start working at a specific employer and be working there for years and years and years, making the exact same pay for all that time. In the Army, they have a set standard as far as how long before you move from E1 to E2, from E2 to E3, so on and so forth, all the way up to E4 anyways. And so that is a set time. As long as you are not getting in trouble to get busted down or something like that, that is an automatic advancement to that next pay grade, which, gives you a pay raise and also moves you up in responsibility as well. Just a little bit, not a whole lot. I mean, sure, you don't have much responsibility moving from a private to a private first class. It's really not until you get to maybe a specialist you get a little bit more authority, kind of in a way, or a little bit more responsibility in some cases. But that's not a guaranteed thing on the civilian side, where it more is on the Army side. Now beyond that, going to E5, E6 and all that stuff's not guaranteed. That stuff you have to work for to get promoted to there, but from that lower area, there is at least some, guaranteed pay raises and advancements in the Army that you may not get guaranteed on the civilian side. Now we fall in on the 5th and last one that I've got on this list, and that is that the Army basically provides soldiers with free room and board. On the civilian side, you're probably not going to have it where an employer is going to pay you to live somewhere unless it's specific to that job, and they're probably not going to pay you anything extra for you to live off of for food. You're probably just set to a specific, wage or whatever it was that you agreed to. You're not going to get anything additional for, food and additional for housing or anything like that, unless it may be a certain kind of applied things, like maybe work for the government sometimes does that, and it's maybe a few other small scenarios, but there's not a lot of places that are going to do that. It's probably pretty rare, unless you're working for the government, that something like that happens. But on the military side, in the Army, they do pay for that. So it works in kind of different ways. If you are a single soldier, then you're living in the barracks. So you don't pay rent, you don't pay utilities or anything like that, living in the barracks. So you don't have to pay rent while you're living in the barracks, and that's just one less thing you have to pay for. Now you have a free place to live. And the condition of those barracks are pretty nice, especially if you have the newer ones. If you have older style ones, then sure, maybe. But those are slowly starting to be phased out of the Army, and there's only some locations that still have these older style barracks that maybe aren't quite as great, but most of them are fairly nice. They're kind of like a 2-bedroom apartment that maybe if you're a lower enlisted soldier, you have to share, another room with another roommate, and then you have to share that kitchenette and bathroom and stuff. But if you're a higher ranking person, maybe like a sergeant or above or whatever, then you probably get your own room and it's a little bit nicer. Now, if you're a soldier on the married side, well, then you have 2 options. You can either live on base, which they have on-post housing, so if that is available to you, that's a house for you and your family to live in for rent-free. There's no rent that is associated with that. There's no utilities that are associated with that. So you have that availability to you to be able to do so. And that kind of varies based on your rank. Usually E1 through E4, maybe for different installations, is more almost like a duplex, whereas you get higher in the ranks and it's more like an actual nice house. But if on-post housing is not available, or a soldier just chooses not to live in on-post housing, they can live off-base and they receive what is called BAH, which is basic allowance for housing, and that money allows them to be able to pay for rent or whatever to have a place to live. So it goes off of the area that they're living in as far as what that rate is, but they get additional money for that. Now, if the soldier works it properly, they can make a little bit extra money off of that, because you don't want to use up all of that BAH allowance for the exact amount of what your rent is going to be. You want to have a little bit extra, maybe to cover utilities and things like that. So, if you work it right and get a good, place to live, you have that little bit of buffer of BAH they're receiving that you can utilize for like utilities and things like that. Now, as far as the food, if you're a single soldier, well, you have a meal card, and so you can eat in the chow halls. You just show that meal card, they scan it, and boom, you get your food taken care of for you. And chow hall food's not bad. It's pretty good. I mean, it's not like, see a MASH or anything crazy like that. So it's fairly good food. So single soldiers can go eat there for, pretty much free. I mean, sure, it kind of comes out of the paycheck, but it never got it in the first place. It's a complicated thing. But essentially, let's just not get down into it, and let's just consider it being free food for single soldiers. And married individuals can eat there too. They just have to pay, and it's really cheap to actually eat in the chow hall. But on the married side, if they want to eat in the chow hall, sure, they can pay for it. If they want to go get groceries, whatever, they receive what is called BAS, which is Basic Allowance for Subsistence. And that is a set rate that soldiers receive for their food, basically money for them to get food off of. Now, it's specifically for the soldier now, so you have to kind of consider that. If a soldier is, just him or her and their spouse, and that's it, then that's one rate. And if they are them, their spouse, and 10 kids, it is the exact same rate. It doesn't matter if they have 1 kid, 2 kids, 20 kids, whatever, it doesn't matter. It is the exact same rate because that basic allowance for subsistence is for the soldier, not for the family. Whereas that BAH that I was talking about a minute ago for your housing does fluctuate based on how many family members you have that are a part of your family. Now, kind of a bonus kind of along with this is the Army actually pays soldiers to move. You're not going to probably get that with very many, employers on the civilian side. If you're going to relocate somewhere, so they're probably going to, maybe if it's for work, they might have some kind of package to help you out and, subsidize the movement rate if you want to transfer or something like that. But for the most part, you might not get that. You might not get an opportunity to have your employer pay your moving expenses, where the Army will. The Army will either go and move everything for you. They have their own contracting individuals that will go and pack everything up from your house or from the barracks, ship it to your new location of where you're going to for your next duty assignment, or even when you're getting out of the Army as well, and even coming into the Army too. And then soldiers also have the option to move everything themselves and then basically get reimbursed for the travel expenses. And the nice thing about that is that if you work that one properly, you can make a little extra money off of that because they go off of what it averagely would cost you to make this movement, not exactly what you paid for that movement. So if you saved a little bit of money on the U-Haul or whatever it was that you did, you could pocket a little bit extra money on that travel expenses that the Army is reimbursing you for. So those were just 5 that I thought I'd outline. There are other benefits and maybe disadvantages or whatever, from the civilian life to the military life, from working for a civilian employer compared to working for the Army. And if you have something that maybe you wanted to kind of bring up, maybe you're a veteran out there or currently in the Army, leave some comments down below. If you are not in the military and you just have simple questions about some differences about some things I talked about or something I didn't talk about, leave some comments down below as well. All right, if you enjoyed that video, show some love by hitting that thumbs up. If you want to check out some recommended videos, I got some right over there. Check out the links down in the description for social media, all sorts of fun stuff down there. I'm ThatChrisChaos. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. See ya.